I was around 14, my dad showed me a book called Farm and Ranch Spanish. It had basic vocabulary and phrases for getting work done around the farm. It was a little bit of an underground book back then, but if you were in the know, you had it. Uh, this is a I think that was the 1960 edition. There's the 1985 edition. Granny gave me this for my 25th birthday in 1990. We were always working on our Spanish. And I'm old enough to remember when things were a little different on that issue, a little bit more relaxed. That's the reason why W, when he was running for president, didn't go as hard on immigration as some folks wanted him to. He said, I know this issue because it had connections to ranching. When I got my first lamb for FFA, we didn't have a good enough pen, and Dad did his best, but the lamb jumped over the fence and ran all around the neighborhood. And luckily, our old oil rig dog that had adopted us, named Spots, went and herded the lamb into the neighbor's flower bed, and we were able to catch it. Here's little Spots. We didn't have her for long, but she was a really good dog. That weekend, one of my dad's friends paid for some Spanish-speaking guys to come and put us up a proper pen that the sheep couldn't get out of. And they did it fast, and they did it hell for stop. It was really impressive to see. A lot of guys were young. Some of them looked like they were not any older than me, which I thought it was kind of brave of them to come to a place where they didn't speak the language and work far away from home. We didn't have any extra money to give them at the time, but Dad gave them a paper sack full of sun-ripened jalapenos from the garden. It was more than we could use ourselves. They seemed pretty happy about it. Let's see. So obviously back in that time, there was some disrespect involved in that relationship, but also some respect. You couldn't help but notice that these guys worked hard, and they worked hard, fast, and did it well, and did it without complaining. Some farmers would take advantage of that. There was one farmer I heard about who would work his men until it was time to pay, and then he would call a Migro on them, and they'd come and pick him up. And INS figured out he was doing that, so one day they made him stop by the bank before they carted the men off, made him pay him. When I was in college, my grandmother had a young couple working for her. Let's call them Pedro and Maria. And he worked in the yard and she kept the house. And we got pretty friendly with him. Granny really liked Maria and I liked Pedro. I was taking Spanish in college, but I wasn't really good enough to have a conversation with him. So we became pen pals for a few weeks. And it turned out that they were from a city called Topolobampo, which is a port city at the end of Copper Canyon at the Gulf of California. And I knew a little bit about that place. My uncle had taken the Copper Canyon train trip, and had told me about his trip. I asked him about the Tarahumara Indians, and he knew about them. They were the couriers for the Aztecs, and they were famous for being able to run fast. He told me that they didn't do well when Mexico put them in the Olympics, though, because they were used to running barefoot, and they had to wear shoes for the Olympics, so it didn't work out. I asked him if food was different in that part of Mexico, and he said, arroz es arroz, frijoles son frijoles, which is rice, beans is beans, which I thought was pretty funny. That I used to hang out. I used to take trips down to the border areas and take trips in Mexico a little bit back in the late '80s, and I've got some great stories about those times. So stay tuned. When I was 14, my dad showed me a book. It was real tattered, and it was called simply Farm and Ranch Spanish. It was a book that had words and phrases for working around the farm, and you weren't going to get fluent from it, but it was enough so that if you had some workers from Mexico, you could tell them what you needed done around the farm. It Things were a little bit different back then. This book was kind of underground, but if you were in the know, you had it. It was sort of essential for farmers and ranchers who didn't know Spanish, so they could get the work done on the farm and the ranch. Had vaca for cow, caballo for horse, and cerca for fence. And a lot of phrases. And right here is this is a copy of it, a newer. I think this is the 1985 edition. It goes back to 1960, and Granny gave me this for my 25th birthday in what was it, 1990, and things were. Things were different back then. Obviously today people are still hiring folks without papers, but it wasn't quite as underground back then as back in the, I would say, 70s and further back. It was a little more accepted that you were going to hire people like that, and when that's actually the reason why when he was running for president, why he wouldn't go as hard on immigration as some folks wanted him to. He told them, I know this, and that's what he was talking about, that farm and ranch culture. And by the way, Mexico invented the ranch, if you didn't know. When I got my first land for FFA, we didn't really have a good enough pin for it. We lived in what passed for the suburbs in a 22,000 population town outside of it. And so Dad's friend paid for some non-English speakers to come and put us up a proper fence. Dad, before it happened, I think I need to start over. Dang it.